What's up, treasure hunters? I'm Joe, the treasure hunting dad, and I go through thrift stores, online auctions, estate sales, estate auctions, and anywhere that I can find items of value for a lot less than they're worth so I can flip them for a profit. I am finally getting around to reviewing my February sales. So if you're interested in seeing what I sold, how much I sold it for, and how much profit I made, just stick around. I'm going to go over my Etsy sales first. And my first sale of February on my Etsy store was this 1957 Shiro Kasamatsu woodblock print. And this original woodblock print was done much earlier. This was a remake of the original, but it was actually done with the original woodblock that was used for the original print, if that makes any sense. This is an actual woodblock print, and it's framed and matted very nicely. It's a pretty well-known print. Here you can see a close-up. It's just of these cormorants. See them sitting in the trees, and this is the signature up in the upper right corner. And here's where I always love, and I say this every time, but I think it's worth repeating. Anytime I see something that catches my attention art-wise, it's always a good idea, one, to look at the frame, and two, to check the back and see if you can find any information on the piece itself. And here you can see it's a woodcut print and the original artist. And this is where it's a hand printed with the woodblock from the original painting. But it's a really nice piece. I'm pretty familiar with woodblock prints, and I always gravitate towards them. I really like, how they come out, especially if they're done really well. So I picked this piece up for $5.99 at my local Goodwill. I probably picked it up maybe 6 months ago or so, and I sold it for $150. So the next thing I sold here, this is a hand-carved duck sculpture out of wood. This is actually called ironwood, and the reason why it's called ironwood is that it's extremely dense and heavy. And just picking this up off the shelf, I noticed you'd think it would be a normal wood sculpture, but it's very surprisingly heavy for the size. And it's nicely done. There's not like a ton of detail, but it's very smooth. Really shows the wood grains very well. It was in really good condition. But overall, just a really nice sculpture. And it wasn't huge, but it was decently big at, it was about a foot wide. So I picked this piece up for $7.99 at my local Goodwill. I sold it. I originally had it listed, I think, for $80, and then I kept dropping it down a bit until it finally sold for $65. So my next sale in February was this large studio pottery vase, and I was not able to ID the artist on this one, but I picked this up at a Savers, and it was only $2.99. The overall construction is really nice. It's pretty symmetrical, and it does have, obviously, a bit of design to it, like a painted design. But it was pretty large. It was 14 inches tall. You can see it was hand-turned. It was in really good condition, and this was the artist signature on the bottom. And I just was not able to find out who exactly made this, but given the size and the overall quality, I knew it was definitely worth a $3 investment here. So I ended up listing this a couple months ago for $125, and that's what I sold it for. You will notice it says refunded, and that's just because I shipped this FedEx and the package was badly damaged when it arrived. So unfortunately, the buyer received a broken vase, but I was able to refund the money, and I still was able to get the profit off of the sale. But it's always frustrating as a seller to have packages damaged during shipping. So my next sale was this oil painting on canvas by Carlo of Hollywood. It's just this autumn scene here in front of a small little lake house. And this was a decent size. It was 24 by 24. But it's a really nice use of colors. I like how the lake is very placid and you can see kind of the reflection of the colorful trees and stuff. Carlo of Hollywood has many different, all sorts of different paintings and this and that. And the signature is very recognizable, just says Carlo. You can see there's a tiny bit of stretching in the canvas. It was like that, obviously, when I bought it. But overall, it's a really nice painting, good use of color and everything else. And I ended up getting this at a Savers for $9.99. And I actually got this a while ago. I wasn't sure if I was going to sell this online or at a local auction, but I decided just to list it. I actually had it listed for more towards $250, and then I just decided to knock it down over time. I had it listed for, 3 or 4 months, and I ended up selling it for $125, and I was happy to see that the buyer left me a 5-star review, which is always a bonus. My next sale here is another piece of studio pottery, and I was not able to ID this piece either. And I actually got this quite a while ago, and I kept trying to figure out if I could ID it, just because it's kind of a unique piece, obviously, with this flower here on the front. And it's really nicely made, very clean. It's got a nice neutral glaze, and this is the chop mark here at the bottom. And I was pretty certain that it looks like CW to me, in kind of a, not quite a square, but I just could not find this maker's mark anywhere. So it went as unidentified, and here's the bottom, also clean it. Whoever, put these pads on the bottom. And that's another thing too, like when you find pottery, if someone takes the time to put pads on the bottom, sometimes, that indicates that the piece might have some value, but that's not always the case. And sometimes I do have to try to peel these off when I'm trying to, most of the time on studio pottery and stuff, the signature is on the bottom. So sometimes you have to peel this kind of stuff away to see the full signature. But I picked this up. It was only like $3 or $4. I got it at my local Goodwill. And I'm trying to get rid of some of the pottery and things like that I haven't been able to ID over, however many months, so I can clear out some room. So I decided to just list this for $50. I thought that was a fair price, and that's what I sold it for. And I got another bonus 5-star review, so that's great. I'm glad that Judy loves her vase. Next thing I sold was this art glass paperweight, and it's just a nicely made orb with kind of a blue accent in the middle and with these bubbles. Usually when I find these types of paperweights, they're only a couple bucks, and they sell pretty quickly, and obviously they're extremely easy to ship. So, they can be a really good starting point for people, anybody that is thinking about trying to go to thrift stores and different things and find, minimal investment items that you can turn around and flip for a pretty good profit on, what you're investing in. And one thing to look on these, and I've said this before, but when you're looking at the bottom, obviously you want to look for signatures or any kind of marking on the bottom, but just in the overall construction, how this is very uniform, it's polished, there aren't like ripples around like it was just cut off at the bottom, indicates that, this was made by, more of a professional glass artist. A lot of Chinese like paperweights that are made that you could even buy on Amazon and stuff, the bottom's just not clean like this on the bottom, and sometimes they're not even polished. So I picked this piece up at a Goodwill for $2 or $3, and I sold it for $30. So my next Etsy sale here was this vintage Japanese Kamakura Bori. This is a carved and lacquered plaque. It wasn't very big. It was only 7 inches in diameter. One thing that is different about this is that it was carved on both sides. At least from what I've seen, a lot of these are just carved on one side, but this had, this kind of flower design on the back also, which made it kind of cool. It's not entirely detailed, but the middle here was pretty nice, and it was in fairly good condition. There are, replicas or whatever of Kamakura Bori, but this is carved wood, and then it has this lacquer, this red lacquer over it. There are some ways to tell if these are authentic or if they're just replicas made of, some sort of plastic or resin. One is to look closely at the overall construction, especially here, like in the middle of the petals. And another way is to see if the lacquer actually comes off. If you have to be careful to do it in a spot where it's not noticeable, but if it comes off with something like nail polish remover, and I really don't recommend trying it out if you aren't familiar with doing it, just because it could end up taking the lacquer off in a spot where it kind of devalues the piece. But if it rubs off on that and you get a little bit of red, then it's obviously not plastic or a resin piece. But you definitely have to be really careful if you want to go that route. But I picked this piece up at Goodwill for only $2, and I sold this piece for $75, and it was obviously very easy to ship given the size, and it was a very light piece. So the next sale I had was this handmade ceramic lamp here of this owl, and I did make kind of like a goofy Instagram post on this. When you actually plug this owl in, I think I actually have, it just, I had to lighten up this picture obviously so you could actually see it, but in the dark, it kind of looks, kind of creepy, just given that these red eyes are showing, and then, the light kind of shines through the feathers. But I thought it was a cool, unique piece, very detailed, especially with all these little feathers and stuff, and how the light, comes through where the feathers are. There were a couple pieces that had broken off, but given the age, and it's not super noticeable, so it wasn't too bad. I did note that in the description, but it was just more of a small table side lamp or like a desk lamp or something. I think I actually got this at a Salvation Army for like $5. I had this listed originally for, I think, $70, and somebody offered me $50 for it. They messaged me and said they really liked it, but would I take $50 for it? And I said sure, just because it's kind of a more unique piece, so kind of different. I didn't expect it to fly out of the store and get sold right away, so I just took the $50 and was happy to give someone a lamp that they really liked. My next sale here was another piece of studio pottery, and this is just a large casserole dish with a really nice kind of mid-century glaze to it. It was in really good condition, and I got this actually a long time ago when I first started, and these things, don't sell super quickly. And I got this for $3 at a Goodwill that was a little bit further from my house. It is signed Schaefer here at the bottom, and it must be a local artist, because I've seen a bunch of pottery with the same signature in the area at numerous thrift stores, like numerous Goodwills. So again, I picked this piece up for $3 and I sold it for $80. Originally, I think I started this out more towards like $125 or $100 or something, but I had it for so long, I just kept knocking down the price, and I had to keep it somewhat high on Etsy just because I have free shipping on all my items, and this was 13 inches wide with the bubble wrap and everything else. I had to use a larger box to ship it, so I couldn't knock this down too far, because then I'd be really cutting into my profit and risking having to pay if I shipped it all the way out west. The next thing I sold here was this watercolor painting. This was done by Judy Bray, who was out of Missouri, and it's just a really nice and clean looking watercolor of irises, I think. This was in one of my thrift store finds video. I only had this maybe for a month. I sold it fairly quickly, but it's, very nicely done. You can see the detail and really good use of colors. And then down there is her signature. And I believe I got this for $5.99 at a Goodwill. And I sold it on Etsy for $150. My next sale was another piece of art, and this was done by Paul Chan, who, if I just searched P Chan, I found a whole bunch of different things, different pieces done by him, and he did a lot of work on batik or silk. And this is just obviously of a lotus flower and, a bird sitting here on the stem. And then here's the signature P Chan at the bottom. And I always tend to, I said this before, but like this kind of art I always tend to gravitate towards, just because, especially when it's not just printed, like a reprint on paper. I don't know, I've sold numerous paintings on batik or silk, and they always tend to fetch a pretty decent profit. I picked this up at a Goodwill for only $5.99. I think I originally had this piece listed for around $175, just given what the other listings that I came across on eBay and Etsy were more in the $225 to $200 range. But I just continued knocking this down until I sold it for $125. So my last Etsy sale of February was this piece of art, and it was done by Bobby Amin, and it is a limited edition screen print. It's a very modern kind of cool piece. Here's a closer view of the screen print. It was very limited. It was only number 16 out of 18. But as soon as I saw it, given the frame and, just the overall look of the piece, plus the pencil information at the bottom, is always a good indicator to at least do a little more research and see if you can get a good profit. Because a lot of times, limited edition hand signed work by doesn't it even have to be like a super well-known artist, can still fetch a pretty good profit. Here you can see it was 16 out of 18, and this was titled Nature's Offering. And then here is the signature, done in 1987. So I picked this piece up for, I think, like $10 at a Goodwill. And I had this listed, I think, for $275. And the buyer actually messaged me and said that Bobby Amin was her art teacher. I can't remember if she said high school or college, or a college professor, but she said she was really surprised to see her work, and she didn't have any of it, and she would really like to buy it, and she offered me $260. So of course I took it, and she left me a 5-star review too, just without any comments. So thank you guys for watching. That's all I got for you today on my sales from February of this year. I appreciate all you tuning in and checking out the different items that I was able to find and sell. If you have any questions, as always, just leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button for me and click that notification bell so you know when I'm posting new videos. I appreciate all of you, and I wish you the best of luck when you're out there treasure hunting.